All right, this is Ren and Rig's Roadmap to Success video. And the Guardians contacted us to help the dogs kind of calm down, especially Ren here. He was pretty excitable. He was barking out the window and just had some anxiety behavior, where Riggs is kind of a little calmer, but come here, buddy. But he was actually kind of more fearful. So I just want to remind you to first start off with that leadership exercise. Remember, that's going to be one of the keys to helping the dogs look to you guys in a leadership position and as authority figures, so they listen to you and they are more respectful, so they start to listen to commands better and are more responsive to you in general. Remember that leadership exercise is when you put the treat in between your feet and you establish an invisible boundary, and then the dogs stay out of the boundary, and then you take steps backwards until they lay down, and then you give them permission to take the treat. I would practice that once a day for the next 2 weeks, and then start weaning off of it to a couple times a week, and then eventually you want to get to a point where you're doing maintenance of doing it once a month. If the dogs start taking much longer than 5 minutes though, I would increase how often you're doing it. So let the dogs kind of guide you on how often you should be doing this in frequency. This will also have an effect on a lot of other behaviors. And then you can use the leadership exercise, that technique of setting an invisible boundary, anywhere in the house. You can set that by the baby's room. You can do that around the couch and in the living room. You can do that around the dining room table. Remember, you can teach the dogs that some things are context dependent, meaning that you only disagree with them and establish that boundary, like, for example, if food is on the table. Where other things, maybe you don't want them ever in the baby's room, so anytime they walk in the baby's room, you disagree with them and have them leave that room. So it's just going to be dependent on how often you disagree with them and what you're doing, and that's how the dogs will learn whether something's off limits always, or if it's only off limits during some time periods. So that's the way to kind of do that, but you also want to have your own personal boundaries that you get to establish. So that means if the dogs are jumping up at you, either don't pay attention to them. You definitely don't want to pet them, because that will reward that behavior. But if they're being nice and calm, that's when you reward them and go ahead and pet them. With the couch, remember, just keep pushing them off the couch into the point where they were about to jump off on their own, and then let go. Let them do the majority of the work, and then let them stay off the couch for the next couple of weeks, and then you can go back to giving them with permission only. Ask them to sit first. Remember our petting with a purpose rule. Have them sit before you pick them up, before you pet them, and before you invite them up on the furniture. You can make sure you keep working with Riggs here. On sit, you take the treat and like lure it over his nose and kind of lean him back into the sit, and that's how you can get him to do that. Make sure that Ren is getting plenty of exercise. If you can, 2 30-minute sessions of playing fetch a day would be perfect for him. And you can use the treat like we did in the video above this one. I'll refer you to that video so you can go over the technique there. And then also for making sure the dogs are still coming when they're called, bring treats out and call them over when they're out in the yard. Give them a treat for coming, and then let them go back to running around and playing. But also give them a treat every time they come all the way inside for you. I like to give my dogs a treat in order of who comes in the door first, so you can let them kind of compete for good behavior. Whoever gets inside first gets the first treat. That will help them be consistent with that. Let's see, anything else? Oh, the separation anxiety and in the kennel. You want to make sure that you're working on that in little small pieces. So have them go in the kennel for maybe a minute, and then let them out. You can always give them treats for going in, and then increase how long they can stay in the kennel without starting to bark or whine. If they start barking or whining, you can't let them out until they're done. Essentially, if you let them out when they're barking or whining, that will be a cue in their mind that that's how they get out, so they'll bark and whine more. So make sure they're calm and quiet when you go to let them out, and you build this up in small increments, like starting with 1 minute, going up to only 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, up to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 30, then 30 to about 45 minutes to an hour, and then you can go hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours. Then you can start to go in about hour increments, 2 hours to 3, so on and so forth. So that's how I would increase the duration with the kennel. This will take time, but it can be well worth it, because it can also give you some off time where the dogs can have their own space that they can go into, especially with the baby on the way. Good boy. And then when helping to clip the nails, you want to do this, a pretty similar thing to the separation anxiety actually, for kennel training is bring a treat out with the clippers, show him the clippers, give him a treat. Show him the clippers, give him a treat. The visual is sometimes enough to make dogs nervous, but get him used to seeing them and having a positive response, wagging his tail like, oh boy, I'm getting a treat next. Then get them close to his feet, then give him a treat. Keep going. Remember that sometimes just getting one nail clipped is enough, especially if it ends in a good experience and he's happy and calm. Stop there, go back the next day and do another one and another. So that way you're ending on a good note. If he remembers it as a positive experience, the next day will start well. If it ends in a negative experience, the next day will probably start a little harder too. So try to end on a good note. And then lastly, I want to remind you that everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.